Everyone was watching the wrong company. For years, every headline in the EV world was about the same names. Tesla launching something new, BYD breaking records, Tata making affordable electric cars. And while all of that was happening, one company, the biggest car company in India, was doing absolutely nothing. At least, that's what it looked like. Maruti Suzuki, the company that puts 4 out of every 10 cars on Indian roads, was completely silent. No prototype reveals, no flashy announcements, no concept cars at auto shows, just silence. And in the EV world, silence looks a lot like surrender. Analysts started writing them off. Social media was full of jokes. Maruti missed the bus. They'll be the Nokia of cars. But here's the thing about Maruti that most people forget. This company has never been first to anything. They weren't the first to make SUVs. They weren't the first to offer automatic transmissions. They weren't even the first to adopt safety airbags. And yet, somehow, they still sell more cars than anyone else in the country. That pattern should have been a warning, because what Maruti was doing behind the scenes was not stalling. It was waiting, and there is a dangerous difference between the two. Then, almost without warning, Maruti dropped the EV2, and the price made people do a double take, $13,000 to $14,000, for an electric SUV in a market where most EVs start at double that or more. Now, a low price alone doesn't mean much. Plenty of companies have launched cheap products that fell apart in a year. The real question, the one that actually matters, is how they got there. Because the answer to that question is what separates a gimmick from a genuine threat to the entire market. And understanding it requires you to look at something most people overlook: the battery in any electric vehicle. The battery is the single most expensive component. It accounts for roughly 30 to 40% of the total cost. That one part alone decides whether an EV is affordable or out of reach. And this is exactly where most companies have made the same choice. They chase maximum range. They use expensive nickel-based chemistry. They pack in as much energy density as possible so they can advertise 800 or 1,000 kilometers on a single charge. It sounds impressive on a spec sheet, but it also drives the price through the roof. Maruti looked at the same equation and asked a completely different question. Not how far can this car go, but how far does this car actually need to go? And the answer, for the vast majority of Indian drivers, is 30 to 50 kilometers a day. That's the commute. That's the school run. That's the weekend errand. Nobody is driving 500 kilometers on a Tuesday morning. So Maruti chose LFP lithium iron phosphate. It's not the most glamorous battery chemistry. It doesn't win spec wars, but it does 3 things extremely well. It's cheaper, it's safer, and it lasts longer. In a country where summer temperatures routinely push past 45 degrees Celsius, the safety part is not a small detail. LFP batteries are far more thermally stable. The risk of overheating, of fires, it drops dramatically. And the longevity factor matters just as much. These batteries handle more charge cycles before they degrade. In plain language, a driver using this car every single day won't be shopping for a replacement battery 5 years down the line. That's not just engineering. That's money saved over the life of the car. And that is a calculation the Indian middle class makes instinctively, but this only matters once you see what Maruti did with the rest of the car. Because a cheap battery in a poorly built vehicle is still a bad deal. And this is where the story starts to get genuinely interesting. When most legacy automakers first entered the EV space, they took shortcuts. They grabbed an existing petrol car platform, a chassis designed around an engine, a gearbox, a fuel tank, and they crammed a battery into it. The result was always a compromise. Awkward battery placement, wasted interior space, uneven weight distribution. It was like renovating an old house and trying to add an elevator after the walls were already up. It never quite works. Maruti didn't do that. According to industry reports, the e-Vitara sits on a dedicated EV architecture developed globally by Suzuki. That means this car was designed from the ground up as an electric vehicle. The battery sits flat under the floor. The center of gravity is lower. Weight is distributed evenly across the entire chassis. And because there's no engine block eating into the front cabin, interior space opens up in ways that a converted petrol car simply cannot match. Rear passengers get more legroom. The boot is more usable. The car feels bigger than it is. And there's a hidden layer to this decision that won't show up in any review, but matters enormously for the future. This platform is modular. That means Maruti can build different vehicles on the same foundation. Today, it's an SUV. Tomorrow, it could be a hatchback. Next year, something bigger. Each new model doesn't require starting from zero. The development cost drops. The timeline shrinks. And that is how a company scales from one EV to an entire lineup. Fast. Now, here's where most people get skeptical. When a car is this cheap, the instinct is to assume something has been cut. And honestly, that instinct is usually right. But the question is, what was cut and whether it actually matters. Maruti didn't strip out safety. They didn't compromise the battery. They didn't use a cobbled-together platform. What they did was deliberately leave out the things that add cost without adding daily value. There's no massive center touchscreen trying to compete with a tablet, no bleeding-edge autonomous driving features that barely work on Indian roads anyway, no luxury interior trim designed to impress in a showroom and collect dust in a parking lot. Instead, they spent where it counts: battery integrity, structural safety, ride quality, thermal management. It's the difference between a phone that costs a fortune because of a ceramic back and a phone that costs half as much but actually works better for everything you need it to do. Maruti has always understood this math. That's how they built the Alto. That's how they built the Swift. And now they're applying the exact same logic to electrification. So where does this leave the competition? Think of the EV market right now as 4 completely different philosophies sitting at the same table. Tesla is selling the future software-defined cars autopilot, over-the-air updates. It's aspirational, it's high-tech, and it's priced for people who can afford to be early adopters. BYD is the technologist, vertically integrated, building their own batteries. Pushing innovation while keeping costs lower than Tesla, but still not truly budget-friendly, Tata is the pioneer, the company that actually kickstarted the Indian EV revolution by proving that electric cars could be practical and affordable. They earned their head start. And then there's Maruti. Maruti is not trying to be the most advanced. It is not trying to be the coolest. It is not even trying to be first. It's trying to be the most normal. And normal might sound like a boring ambition until you realize that normal is exactly how you move millions of units. Tata brought EVs to the middle class. Maruti is trying to push them one step further, to the point where buying an electric car feels no different than buying a petrol one. Same dealership, same service center, same guy you've been trusting with your car for 15 years. And that trust network is something no competitor can replicate quickly. Maruti has the largest dealer and service network in India by a wide margin. For a first-time EV buyer, that's not a feature, it's permission to take the leap. But there is one thing that could undermine all of it, and it has nothing to do with the car itself. India's charging infrastructure is still broken. In metro cities, the network is slowly improving. But step outside the big urban centers, into the towns, onto the highways, and the gaps become real. Range anxiety isn't irrational when the nearest charger is 80 kilometers away and you're not sure it's even working. This is the silent problem that slows down every EV story in India. And Maruti's answer is not the answer Tesla gave. Tesla built its own supercharger network from scratch. Maruti is not doing that. Instead, they're taking a more grounded approach, partnering with existing charging networks, tying up with oil companies, adding EV chargers to fuel stations, and installing charging points at their own dealerships. It's not revolutionary, but it's practical. And alongside that, Maruti is pushing hard on home charging, because in India, most car owners park at home. If you can plug in overnight and wake up to a full charge, the need for public charging drops dramatically. Your commute is covered. Your errands are covered. The only time you need a public charger is for the occasional long trip, and by the time Maruti's EV lineup expands, that infrastructure will likely have caught up. Here's what most people are not seeing yet. The Terra is not the real product. The real product is the idea it introduces. The idea that an electric car doesn't have to be a statement, it doesn't have to be expensive, it doesn't have to be wrapped in futuristic branding or sold as a lifestyle upgrade. It can just be a car. A normal, boring, reliable car that happens to run on electricity instead of petrol. And if Maruti succeeds in planting that idea in the heads of millions of Indian families, then the Terra won't be remembered as a great car. It'll be remembered as the moment electric vehicles in India stopped being special and started being ordinary.